In The Go-Giver, Bob Berg and John David Mann flipped the usual success formula on its head. Instead of asking, "How much can I get?" they challenge us to ask, "How much value can I give?" The book reminds us that genuine success isn't about taking more, but about creating more value for others, and that generosity is the secret ingredient that fuels lasting impact. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Bob Berg, the co author of this modern classic, to dive deeper into these principles and how they apply to our lives and businesses. Bob's a sought after speaker at company leadership and sales conferences, sharing the platform with everyone from today's business leaders and broadcast personalities to even a former US president. Bob's the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, with total book sales of well over 1 million copies. His book, The Go Giver, has sold over 500,000 copies, and it's been translated into 21 languages. It's been released in a new expanded edition with a foreword by Ariana Huffington, the founder and publisher of the Huffington Post. First, Bob, good to have you here.
Thank you, Todd. Great to be with you.
So I've read your book. I reread your book, The Go Giver, and I guess I'd like to start with what brought you to write the book and put these values in, and what were you looking to teach people?
Well, it was based on a how-to book I wrote many years ago called Endless Referrals: Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales, which was really, excuse me, a book for people who were in sales, who loved what they did, believed what they did, understand they brought great value to the table, but didn't feel comfortable with the process of connecting with new people on an ongoing basis and creating the relationships that resulted in being known and liked and trusted and so forth. So it was just sort of a step-by-step how to do that. Through the years, though, I'd always read and enjoyed business parables, short stories that connected with people, had a lesson, and so forth. And I thought for many years it would be great if we could take the lessons in Endless Referrals and put them in a story form, a short story, and bring that to the market. And so the main question I asked myself was, well, how do those know, like, and trust relationships get developed? And it's the result of constantly giving value to everyone you see, being focused on bringing value to everyone. And so I got together with John David Mann, who was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I wrote for at the time. And John was very well known in a specific niche market as a brilliant writer. And fortunately, I knew he was. And so I asked him to be the lead writer and storyteller. And so we came up with The Go-Giver and the 5 basic principles and kind of brought it home from there.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And so I'd like you to go into, if you don't mind, share with the audience, the 5 laws. And I'm curious, did these sort of organically come out of some of the work that you did in the past, or how did you first come up with these laws? And I know 5. Everyone says 5 to 7. A memory thing. Right. But I'm just curious, before you get into the 5 laws themselves, is how do they evolve?
Yeah, well, John and I both have a background as entrepreneurs, and also John, of course, as a writer and author, and was always interviewing very successful people. As a speaker, I got to meet some of the most successful people in sales and leadership, and we're both inquisitive, asking questions. I know John studies success. I've been studying success for as far back as I can remember, and there are certain principles that time after time after time come up that work when you follow them.
Right.
And when you're able to sort of stack them and follow them in conjunction, not just a few of them, but follow all of them, it tends to result in success. And when you don't, it tends to result in a lack of success. And so these are things that I know worked for me, worked for John, worked for the many people we interviewed. And so we put them together in story form. I don't think in fact, I know there's nothing particularly new about anything that we talked about in the story, right? In fact, the early adopters, if you will, of the Go-Giver were not the people who needed it. It's the people who've been running their lives and their businesses this way for a long time.
Right.
And they wrote to us and said, this is exactly what I've been telling people or teaching people. You put it in book form. Yeah. And that's sort of how that really started. So
that's great. Very rewarding there, right? To hear that feedback, right?
Yeah. Then the second wave was from people who had heard about it from those who they admired, respected, and so forth. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, organic in terms of they've been around for a long time, and it's something that John and I. But as we were writing it, we sometimes felt the laws began to write themselves in what we named them and how we would use them in the story and so forth.
Right.
So I guess the answer is yes and yes.
Yeah, it sort of came full circle. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, I know the laws, but maybe you could tell
Sure.
people that aren't familiar with them, and not that, not so much promoting the book. I think it's a great opportunity. I think that subconsciously I tend to lead with these as well, and what's made me succeed as an entrepreneur. I think one of the great points that you bring out in the book is, like you mentioned before, is that some people do some of these well and then others not so well. And I think one of the great things that this book points out is, you sort of have to do all of them well. If you really want to succeed. So with that said, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the five laws.
Sure. The laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. The law of value says your true worth in the business sense, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment, which sounds a bit counterintuitive when you first hear it. It sounds like it's a recipe for bankruptcy, right? Give more in value than I take in payment. So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is.
Right.
Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, whether it's a product or service or concept or idea or what have you, that brings so much worth to someone, Todd, that they will willingly exchange their money or time or energy, whatever is being asked, in order to have this value.
Right.
And feel great about it, right? Because they're receiving such a unique, wonderful experience,
right,
that they feel as though they're receiving more in value or use value than what they're paying. While we as the go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's interesting. I've been following Tesla, and I'm sure I'm guessing Elon Musk as a fellow entrepreneur. And it was really interesting. I read a story recently that said that the first Consumer Reports review on the car, they rate them on quality and craftsmanship and then customer service and all that. And the first Tesla review on quality was poor, but the customer service was through the roof. And then they finally ended it with, would you buy another Tesla? And everyone resoundingly said yes. And so it's that value, right? Is that even though the car's quality maybe wasn't so up to snuff when it first came out, the overall perceived value and how they addressed those deficiencies rang through, right? And thus, Tesla's a success story as it is today.
Sure. Well, the key is understanding that value is always in the eyes of the beholder.
Yeah.
It's not what we, the entrepreneur, business person, salesperson, thinks should be of value to someone else.
Right.
It's what they believe is of value. And that's why sales, and that's why selling is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires, and helping them to get it.
Yeah.
And when we do that, now we're creating that context for someone to want to buy and feel great about it. And this is why John and I say that money is simply an echo of value.
Yeah.
It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means the value, and that must be the focus. The value comes first.
Right.
And the money you receive is simply a
reward.
very natural and direct result of the value you've provided. Yeah. And I'm assuming that Tesla's cars are now of a higher quality as well, because I'm sure that he wasn't going to let that be something that stayed, because it can only last for so long unless the quality's
comes up to meet that price point. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So tell me about compensation, the second law.
Yeah, this one says that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number one says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number two tells us the more people whose lives you touch or impact with the exceptional value you provide, the more money you will make, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So it's not just a matter of of providing exceptional value to one person or a few
Right.
people, we've
Right.
also got to be able to. And that's why
Scale.
word of mouth is so important. That's why building a referral-based, introduction-based business is so important. It allows us to reach out and be able to reach out to more people than we would if we had to do it with no word of mouth, without being able to leverage those great relationships.
Right, right. And I guess that sort of leads right into the third law, right, of influence.
Right.
Right?
Law number 3. Yeah. And that says that your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, again, this sounds counterintuitive when you first hear it. It maybe even sounds Pollyanna-ish, right?
Right.
Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. But then you think about it. The greatest leaders, the top influencers, the most profitable salespeople, this is simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses.
Yeah.
They're always looking for ways to make other people's lives, businesses, what have you, better. Now, I just want to qualify this, Todd, if I may, because it can be easily misunderstood.
Yeah.
And this is important. When we say place the other person's interest first, we certainly don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all.
Yeah.
It's simply that as Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors, and as we alluded to earlier, the golden rule of business says that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by genuinely and authentically moving from what we call an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking for ways to make your win about the other person's win.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I'm a big reader, how I learned of your book. But I did read, there's a famous case study, I guess, of a car dealer in Texas. And some of the things that he offered to his customers were very unique, and people in the industry thought he was crazy. But if you think about it, it makes sense. And, you know, one of the things he offered was, he said to the dealer, if someone calls and says, I locked my key in the car, he said, would you charge your friend to go and help him get unlocked out of his car? Because if you wouldn't charge your friend, then we wouldn't charge either. And so it's interesting because it's something so little and it probably costs nothing. But that one story, I mean, imagine if you called your car dealer and said, my key is locked in the car. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll be over in 10 minutes. And you said, well, how much is it going to cost? And they said, nothing. I mean, you're going to tell 1 million people this story.
Of course. Absolutely.
And it's amazing. And it is. It's putting that customer first mentality is, you know, I wouldn't charge a friend. So why would I charge this person?
Yeah, I love that. Those are those little things that you can do when you're placing their interests first, understanding that the paradox is, to the degree, especially in a free market-based economy, and when I say that, I mean no one is forced to buy from anyone else, right? In a free market-based economy, to the degree you place other people's interests first and please them, that's the degree you're going to be a roaring success. Harry Brown, I think it was, once said, in a free market, profit is simply the result for pleasing another human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so good segue here into authenticity.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Law number 4, the law of authenticity, says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Yeah. And in the story, Deborah Davenport, one of the mentors, shared a lesson she learned that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are, indeed, very, very important. They're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core.
Self, right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you.
Yeah.
People feel safe with you. People are much more likely to want to be in relationship with you, do business with you, refer business to you. So why then do some people show up as I guess the correct Latin term would be phonus balonus, and not really themselves. And the easy default answer is, well, they're dishonest, or they're this. And it's a big world. There's all sorts of people, but I don't think that's usually the case. I think most times when you see people not really showing up authentically, Todd, it has more to do with the fact that they don't have the self-confidence to do so, the belief in themselves and the real value that they provide. And
Yeah.
I think as human beings, we provide we provide intrinsic value. We have intrinsic value just
Yeah.
by being here, but we also have what I call market value.
Mm-hmm.
And I define market value as that combination of strengths, traits, talents, and characteristics that allows a person to bring value to the marketplace in such a way that which they'll be financially rewarded. We
Yeah.
all have this.
Yeah.
Different people have different, what Mike Littman would call assets of value.
Right.
But the
Right.
problem with this is that as human beings, we're so emotionally involved with ourselves,
Yeah.
it's difficult to see that
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah,
And what
absolutely.
we tend to do naturally, or maybe we work very hard at learning it, but now it's just part of our being, we tend to think, oh, we can do it, everyone can do it, or,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important to sometimes have a coach or a mentor, and it can be formal, could be informal, could be
Yeah.
your sales manager, could be a friend of yours, could be who can sort of be removed enough emotionally that they're able to see
Yeah.
that great value you
Yeah.
bring and help you to recognize it. Because while we've got to be aware of our weaknesses, we need to really lead with our strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do a lot of work with teams of people. And one of the concepts that we talk about a lot now, and I think it's a new term, I guess, but is the concept of psychological safety. Is how can you be yourself and bring yourself to work if you're in a team setting and you don't feel safe with the people that you're working with? And a lot of that goes true with sales, right? Is that if you don't understand who you are, then how are you going to be able to relate and create that relationship with that person over the phone or, over the Skype call or, in person, face to face? And it's absolutely true. And we teach a lot is, it's okay to get feedback. And we want feedback because at the end of the day, if we're all open and honest and free with each other, then the team is going to raise their level of productivity and performance to become that high performing team. So it's a lot, it's harder too with teamwork, obviously, because now we're taking multiple people and multiple personalities. But you're absolutely right, is that authenticity rings through. And I think you can see that a lot in a lot of the salespeople that succeed is that, you feel like you know them and you feel comfortable with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's a lot now in leadership where they're beginning to understand that you do have to set this environment of safety, of feeling safe. Simon Sinek, in his great book, Leaders Eat Last, he said, trust is a biological reaction to the belief that someone has your well-being at heart. And I think that's so true. And when you create a team where they know the leader has their back, cares about them, they will trust the leader and they will trust each other more.
That's
there's
great.
also,
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And then finally, your fifth law, receptivity.
Yeah, this law says that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. Mm-hmm. And what this really means is that we both breathe out and breathe in. It's not one or the other. We breathe out carbon dioxide, we breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving, but we also breathe in, which is receiving. Mm-hmm. And we get so many messages from the world around us that prosperity is a bad thing, or that for someone to get wealthy, they had to do it on the backs of others, and that this and that, and it can get into the head, and it can get into the psyche, and it can really keep someone from allowing themselves to receive. Yeah. And the fact is, Todd, that giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. Yeah. It's not a matter of are you a giver or a receiver. You're a giver and a receiver. Now, the focus is on the giving. It's on the giving of value. It's finding ways to provide value to others, to individuals, to the marketplace, to your team, to your whomever. Okay, the focus is on the giving. But as we do that, we need to open ourselves and allow ourselves to receive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love the laws. I think that they're great. They from a sales perspective, just from a person, just to be a good person perspective, right? I can
Thank
see, them paying dividends. And so what I'd like to shift a conversation a bit to now is, a lot of what I've been doing in these interviews is, focusing on change. And so I'd be interested in, if you have stories or anecdotes. I know you're a storyteller, so it should be pretty easy. How have you found the change and the transformation process because I know you also coach and you speak to people as well, but how has it gone? Like, what if when you're working with a salesperson or a group of salespeople, and you say, okay, I'm going to teach you these laws, and let's start with the value, and I want you to give more than you take in payment. And what has been the process? Like, what have you seen? How people react to that and move, from a resistance. I'm sure you've walked into meetings before, right? And you've got the people, their arms crossed, and like, this guy's crazy, right? And I'm curious, how have you shifted that model to get them to believe in this?
Well, first, there's got to be an understanding that, and there's got to be an acceptance by that person that the way they're doing things now is not working for them as well as they'd like it to be.
Right.
Because if someone is a what we call a go taker, and somebody is just focused on themselves and through however they've done it, in spite of themselves, they've been successful financially or what have you. And they say, well, that's what I learned. That's how I am. They're not going to change.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's not usually the case, because the fact is that most people who do things that kind of old way or whatever don't feel as though they're where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so they tend to be open to ideas
Right.
that can take them to a different level of success.
Yeah.
So it's first an understanding that a change, as you know, unless you feel the need to change or to do something different, nothing's going to happen. Of course not. So once that is in place, now it's, well, why? How does that work? I can see this go-giver, this focus on others being something to do after I'm already successful, but I need the money right now. How do I end this, right?
Yeah.
And so we take an example, and I would say, let's say that I'm the salesperson.
Yeah.
And you are the prospect. I have a product or service, and I'm about to do a presentation for you. Okay. And you can tell that I'm just blah, blah, blah about my product, that you can tell my main focus is not really pleasing you, but it's transferring your money from your pocket into mine. Yeah. Maybe I ask some questions, but I interrupt so I can get my points in, and everything is in order to close. And again, you can tell the focus is on me, not on you. Are you more likely or less likely to buy from me right now? And most people are going to say less likely, of course. Right. And I say, okay, now let's take another scenario. I'm the salesperson, and you're the prospect, but you can tell. And by the way, I'm just starting, and I need the money as much as that person who's all about it, right? So that's not the issue. But remember, they're not buying from you. No one's going to buy from you because you need the money.
Right.
They're not going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Yeah.
And they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person who believes in what you do. No, they're going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's the only reason why they should.
Yeah.
So now salesperson 2 comes in, right? And only they're totally different. Their focus is on them. They're asking questions and they're listening. They're asking questions so that they can discover what this other person needs, wants, desires. They only after they understand and clarify that they understand correctly what this person wants, only then do they match the benefits of their product or service with what this person needs, wants, or desires. Mainly, this prospect can tell that this salesperson's looking to bring value to them. Yeah. Are they more likely or less likely to buy from you right now?
Right.
And the chances are most people are going to say more likely. Well, and that's what we're talking about. Yeah. As a go-giver, there's nothing self-sacrificial about it. Go-givers make more money. They also are able to charge higher prices because they're focused on the value they provide, not on low price.
So, what would you Yeah, and so Bob, what would you do if you walked into that organization where you've got, I can picture this guy in my head, right? I've worked here for a number of years. I've done great. I'm not the top, but I know what I'm doing. Don't you tell me something new, right? So like you talked about, like obviously the start, right, is the right change is we have to understand that what we're doing today isn't working. So what would you do with working with a company where they say, we want our values to change. We want to start having everybody focus this new way based on, the go-giver. And you've got this, fictional guy, Larry, that says, this isn't for me. How would you, what have you done in the past that sort of, you could approach Larry and, what would you need to do to sort of get him over the hump? Or does Larry leave the company because this isn't for him? He doesn't want to sell this way.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things at work. There are a couple things in place. One is what is the culture of that company? Paul Anderson is one of our certified go-giver speakers now. And Paul's story is he went into a company several years ago, and this is before he had ever read the book, okay?
Wow.
He went into a company, a big furniture manufacturing company that had a horrible culture. It was a culture in many ways like this person that you're describing. Yeah. That kind of went
Larry.
Yeah. And he really came in and turned it around. But first, the head of the leadership of the company, he had to get their buy-in, because if they weren't totally committed to it, there's no way it was going to trickle down to the others in the company. And there had to be a commitment that they were going to do things different. It needed to be about the customer.
Yeah.
And so, within a year or so, there was a real change. And now this company the sales have gone through the roof. Their culture is wonderful. I'm just excited that it was after that Paul heard about the book, and since he's become a certified go-giver speaker and he's speaking at companies all over. But that's the thing. If that buy-in wasn't there at the time, you can lead from anywhere, okay? Yeah. And certainly great authors like Mark Sanborn, Robin Sharma, and others have proven that. You can, in their books, you can lead. Yeah. But a culture begins at the top.
Yeah.
And it trickles down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, if that person, Larry, is going to be disruptive to the rest of the team, there's a good chance he probably wouldn't be staying around. He probably would leave himself, actually.
Right.
But if not, that would be a decision that would have to be made. I couldn't, from here in a fictional thing, just.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me to work with a company like that, I would have to know that there's a buy-in from the top and that they're committed to it, or else no, it's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And too, what I find in a lot of the work that I do, right, is absolutely, you need to have that buy-in and commitment from the top. You need to understand that the way we're doing things today can be improved and made better. And then you mentioned another part about modeling the behavior. And a lot of the work that we do, like your work, is coaching and helping people understand, okay, watch me. Right? I'm going to do it this way. And what's the difference? And I'm sure in sales too, because you can model certain sales calls a certain way and see things, that it's probably very clear to some people, I hope to all people, this is the old way of making a call versus the new way of leading with a call.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing I can do. You're so spot on with that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. And so, I really appreciate your time. A lot of the focus on this summit really is about change, and I wanted to bring in different aspects. A lot of the people that are going to see this, come from the software world, and sometimes they think, what does sales have to do with anything? But it's amazing because half of the calls that I'm on and working with software developers, well, we all have customers. We have business people, right, that we're working with. And so when our customer asks for the moon, we need to understand and sort of put our sales hat on and say, here's why we can do it or we can't do it, or here's a different option, right? And also, and it's interesting that, you lead with value, because a major part of the software development movement right now, specifically around Agile, is they're changing the way that they are writing requirements. And one of the things that they talk about is they want the requirement to be first written from a user perspective that describes the benefit. And then finally, it ends with what is the value that the customer will receive when we give them what they've asked for. And it's amazing because now that we know the value, we're able to prioritize the work. If the value says to be compliant with a federal mandate, versus the value is, it's a nice report. Well, clearly we can see the value and it's expressed very clearly, and we're able to deliver that value. And in fact, all of the work that we're focused on right now is all about if there's no value in delivering what we're setting out for, why are we doing it?
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of correlations here between the sales world and between the software development world. And I hope that what people can take away from this is whether they're selling or just being a new, authentic, bringing your whole self to work person, I think everyone can, appreciate and learn from these 5 laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. So I really appreciate your time. I think the book is great. If people want to go out and read it, I really encourage everyone to go read your book.